What is freedom? Do you advocate for freedom, or do you advocate for a political party? Let's talk about it. Greetings, back again. I know it's been a while since I made a video, and I just feel compelled to speak yet again on there's so much going on. I just don't even know where to go sometimes. I could make 20 videos a day with all the stuff that goes on, but I know you don't want to see all that. I also have to consider my editorial staff, the people who helped me put this together, and their time schedule and what they have going on. So if it seems to you like it's been a little too long for a video, understand that there's more people involved in this than just me. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about, as I said in the opening, is what is freedom? What do you think it is? I mean, we all have different opinions on that, I would imagine. But for me, freedom, as codified in our Bill of Rights and our Constitution, starts simply with less government. Now, I know there are people out there who call themselves anarchists, and they believe in no government, and there may be a place for that. Maybe that's the way we need to go. I don't know. I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm certainly leaning in that direction. But let's start with our Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Do those documents limit us and what we can do? Were they designed to restrict or limit us and what we can do? And the answer is no. They were designed to limit what the government can do. Limit. Look up the word limit. L-I-M-I-T. I'll spell it out for some of you who may have trouble with those things. Limit the government. The Bill of Rights starts out by spelling out certain individual rights. Now, obviously, it cannot spell out every single individual right. They'd still be writing it. They would have started in 1776, and they'd still be adding to it today. So that's just impractical. You can't write down and codify every single human or individual right. But what can we learn from that document? And that is that you and I as humans have rights. We're born with them. The religious among us will say they come from God. Others of us will say they come from our humanity. There are countries around the world that don't recognize those rights. North Korea comes to mind, Russia, Cuba, just to name three. But that doesn't mean those people in those countries don't have rights. It simply means that the governments under which they live don't recognize those rights in lieu of an all-powerful government. Now, here in America, we're supposed to enjoy individual rights, liberty, freedom. Those words get used interchangeably, and I tend to do that myself, so I hope that doesn't confuse anybody. But you have certain rights. Now, what are the extent of those rights? What limits are on those rights? As far as I'm concerned, there are no limits until you begin to infringe on the rights of others. If something that you're doing harms another or infringes on the rights of another, then you have crossed a line. I'll just use one example. Drugs. People out here, for whatever reason, like to use drugs. I don't agree with that. I don't use drugs myself. Never smoked pot in my life, don't want to, don't care to. But people do. Just like some people enjoy drinking an adult beverage. That's their right. Now, if you want to do that and it causes harm to you, that's on you. It's not my responsibility. If you smoke pot and you want to get in your car and go drive down to the grocery store to get some snacks and you're driving impaired, then it becomes my problem. because now you're in a 2,000-pound missile on the road and you could hurt somebody. You see the difference? Do you understand? It's the same thing with drinking. If you want to sit at home and empty half a bottle of Jim Beam, that would be a silly thing to do in my opinion, but if that's what you enjoy doing, do it. If you kill your liver, that's on you. Doesn't hurt me. But if you get in a car and you drive after you've been drinking, now you become my problem. Do you see the point I'm making? Once you begin to infringe on somebody else's rights, that's the limit. Otherwise, live your life as you see fit. It's up to you. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to like it. It's not incumbent upon me to give you my approval. If I don't like the way you live your life or the things you do, I just choose not to associate with you. See how that works? People I have as friends are people whom I respect and people whose ideas and philosophies are close to mine. No, we don't agree on everything, but we agree on enough. So that to me is freedom. Now, excuse me. Moving on, who else do you know in your life, at work, in this country, who believe that's what freedom is? If you ask somebody from a political party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. They each have their ideas of what freedom is, and it's usually based on what their party wants. Try it sometime. Talk to somebody. Ask them questions. Ask them how they feel about certain issues and see how those beliefs line up with their party platform. Republicans and Democrats both do it. I mean, there's no better one that's better than the other. They both have their peccadillos. They both have their preferred spending. They both think the government should grow in certain areas. And we can talk about that in a minute. But when you start advocating for laws, voting for people who advocate for laws that restrict my freedom, your freedom, somebody else's freedom, now you're crossing a line, something that I'm not willing to put up with, and I'm not going to tolerate, and I'm not going to stand by quietly and allow it to happen. Democrats love big government. And let me give you some examples. All right? Here's some examples of how the Democrats restrict your freedom. And I'll get to the Republicans in a minute. Don't think this is all about Democrats. Democrats love individual welfare. They think that money should come out of your paycheck, and they get to determine how much. You don't get to. It's not up to you. They determine how much money comes out of your paycheck and goes to different programs to help individuals. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It's philanthropic. It's charitable. We should care about our fellow human beings. Well, it's not charity if you're forced to do it. But Floyd, what do you mean? You're not forced to do it. Oh yeah? Don't pay your taxes. See what happens. You think you're not being forced? You know the IRS has its own SWAT team, don't you? They have guys with guns who will come to your house to lock you up. Don't believe me? Look it up. I'm not making this stuff up. So if you create a situation like that, you vote for it. Either the politicians vote for the law or you vote for the politicians who create that law, then you're advocating for it. You're saying to me that I'm going to have to give up part of my paycheck to pay for something that you like. Well, screw you. It's not your damn money. It's mine. And I get to decide what is done with it. Not you. And whenever you create these new programs, you create bureaucracies. And when you create bureaucracies, those bureaucracies need more money. And guess where that money comes from? Another thing they like, government health care. Well, the government does everything else so well. Why shouldn't we want the government to handle our health care? That's a whole nother video. That would take several hours to cover. But just think about it. If the government's involved in taking care of you, the government gets to decide what you can and can't do based on whether or not it's healthy for you. You really want the government making those decisions for you? And once again, we're talking about a bureaucracy, a huge bureaucracy that's going to need more money, and that money comes from our paychecks. And not just our paychecks. The income tax is bad enough, but then you got state income taxes, you got local taxes, you got property taxes, there's a tax on your phone, a tax on the gas that you buy. Think of all the things you pay taxes on. And think about how efficiently that money gets spent. Am I right? Government schools. Oh, the Democrats love government schools. Man, you talk to them about, charter schools or letting people keep their own tax dollars and spend it on the school they want to go to, and Democrats just lose their minds. You hate education. Why do you hate children so much? Blah, blah, blah. Never considering, of course, that no, we don't hate education. In fact, we love education. We respect and understand the need for education. But when the government is doing it, the government sets the rules, the government sets the curriculum, are you really getting the best bang for your buck? Really? Republicans. Oh, no. You're not getting a pass on this. Here's things Republicans love to spend money on. The Pentagon, military spending. Oh my God, don't even talk about cutting military spending. They'll come after you with the full force of the law. They'll call you everything but a child of God. Don't you dare talk about cutting military spending. What, do you hate the military? Do you hate our military personnel? What's wrong with you? Of course, that's how they word it. That's how they come at you. If you don't like all that spending, then you must hate the people the money's spent on, right? Let's not talk about the billions, with a B, billions of dollars in waste that is military spending. Let's not talk about the fact that the over 170 military bases we have around the globe don't really need to be there. And if we brought all those people home and stopped spending money on our empire, we wouldn't need to spend so much on military spending. But then again, we wouldn't control as many resources around the world as we do now, right? And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Don't think it's about the defense of the country. Don't think it's about protecting your rights. Because at the same time, the Republicans are telling you the military is fighting to protect your rights. We're losing them every day. So they must not be doing a very good job. Corporate welfare. Well, the same Republicans who will rail against individual welfare love to spend money on corporations. Oh, they'll give corporations all kinds of tax breaks and all kinds of bailout money because they're too big to fail. Don't you dare declare bankruptcy and come back with a better business model and do a better job of selling or making your product. We'll just give you some money. Well, guess where that money comes from? Anybody? Anybody? Idiots. You still think the government should play a role in health care? The Republican plan. Even Donald Trump, your savior, has talked about we need to stop Obamacare and implement a Republican plan for health care. Well, what does that say to you? What it says to me is the government is still going to be involved in your health care. And I don't think the government should be involved in your health care. Now, the bottom line to all of this is quite simple. Both parties love to spend money. When's the last time you saw the Republican Party cut any spending anywhere? When's the last time they reduced the size of government? When's the last time you met a Republican official who actually lived up to the Republican creed? Look it up. Just type in Republican creed in your computer and look it up, and then look at what it says, and then ask yourself, I wonder what Republicans are actually living up to this. Because you're not going to find too many. The bottom line is this, and I'm going to include a link in the information section below this video on classical liberalism. I consider myself a classical liberal. What does that mean? Well, it basically means what I've just been talking about. Number one, when it comes to fiscal responsibility, there are things the government should not be doing and should not be spending money on, period. Fiscal responsibility. You want to be charitable? You want to give money to people who need help? Knock yourself out. But that's not the government's job or responsibility. Because when the government takes on that job, the government decides how much money they get to take out of your paycheck. And that's not the role of government. Classical liberal means if you want to live your life in a way that I think is silly, knock yourself out. Go for it. I may not agree with it. It's not up to me to agree with it. It's your life, not mine. And like I said before, up until you reach this point where you start crossing that line and infringing on my rights or infringing on someone else's rights, you can live your life any way you choose. If what you're doing may cause harm to you, that's between you and your family. I got nothing to do with it. Does that make sense? So watch the video that I'm going to include and see if that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, say something in the comments. I'd love to hear from you if you disagree with what classical liberalism is. But at the end of the day, both parties want to spend money. Both parties want to grow the government, if maybe for different reasons, but they're still growing the government. They're still spending your money. They're still taking money out of your paycheck. And not just your paycheck. Sit down one day and make a list of all the things you pay taxes on. So when you think about freedom, when you start using that word freedom, just understand this. The more government you have, the less freedom you have. It's no more difficult to understand than that. So Democrats, Republicans, whoever you are, whatever you consider yourself, every time you advocate for more government, every time you advocate for a new law, every time you advocate for something that's going to create more bureaucracy, understand this. You're going to have more money taken away from you, and you're going to have less freedom. Is that what you think freedom is?